Hi again then guys, and welcome to another returning car from Gran Turismo's past with the brand new DLC pack. This is one of the most powerful cars in the pack, one of the fastest cars, and also one of the slightly more expensive ones, although the pricing is incidentally exactly the same as what it was on Gran Turismo 6. And if there was ever a supercar that deserves a 1 million credit price, it's pretty much this one, the Ferrari Enzo, sometimes called the Enzo Ferrari for obvious reasons. It's the name of the guy who founded the company. This is a car which a lot of people have very strong love for on Gran Turismo 6. And it's not hard to see why. The Enzo is a widely loved car in the real world, and in the world of Gran Turismo, and some other racing games as well, you can make it a lot faster than any of the real-world versions are. A lot more powerful, lighter, which of course you'd never do to a real Enzo. You would immediately drop its value a lot, if not half. So what can you do to this car in a new way on GT Sport? What kind of updates has it had visually, sound-wise, performance-wise? How does it compare to the existing version of the vehicle in the game already? Well, the improvements are slight in some ways, but it's more so differences than improvements. And that may sound like a negative, but bear with me, because not necessarily. Now, the raw spec is of course the same. 6 litre, V12, 658 horsepower, 485 pound-feet of torque, and it weighs a very impressive 1255 kilos. Now, of course, you can heavily tune that. Really heavily tune that. You can tune it up to the N1000 class, you can drop the weight by quite a bit. It still weighs over a tonne, but still, you can drop it by quite a bit. So the question is it good? Because on GT6, it's really good. It's one of the best supercars in the game, in fact. Not necessarily the most beginner-friendly, but when driven properly, it's very fast. It's faster for top speed than the FXX, the acceleration is among the best of any supercar in the game, and at high speed the handling is a lot easier to work with than many of the other supercars. So does that remain the same, or has it changed, given how different the physics of GT Sport are in comparison to older Gran Turismo games? Well, I would say yes, it has definitely changed. Now, I'm running in this video the car in its fully tuned form on Sports Soft tyres. So of course, with around 1000 horsepower in a rear-wheel drive supercar on sports tyres, it's not going to be the most beginner-friendly thing out there. However, it is certainly fast. Now, in a similar way to the LaFerrari, this is definitely a supercar which is going to divide opinion among people who drive it. If you love the Enzo, you will probably be able to overlook any kind of difficulties there are with the handling anyway, because that's just the nature of fandom. We tend to overlook mistakes because of our love for the car, or the track, or the motorbike, or the game, or whatever the fandom is. In the case of the Enzo, the handling is significantly different to on Gran Turismo 6. And if you've driven the LaFerrari on GT Sport already, it's much more similar to that than you might expect it to be. Now, at the same time, the LaFerrari is the spiritual successor to the Enzo, so really that's not too surprising, but I would say that the Enzo is like a slightly more docile version of the LaFerrari, but not by much. This is still a very slippery car, especially in fully tuned form, and the biggest thing that you need to worry about in this car, and I've mentioned this with a few vehicles, and I really hope they change this because it's getting kind of annoying, you can't upgrade the brakes. And when you can't upgrade the brakes on any car, but give it 1000 horsepower to work with, you're going to have problems. That's a simple fact. Now, with this car going around this track, as you can see, I'm not flying off after every corner, but I definitely had to restart this flying lap, or flying laps, a number of times, because I had to totally recalculate where I should be braking with this car, in a similar way to the LaFerrari, but unlike the LaFerrari, the aero on the Enzo isn't quite as active. The LaFerrari has much more instances of active aero in terms of body panels that move, and that makes such a huge difference to the car. People don't realise the kind of difference that active aero, stuff like air brakes, makes. Now, of course, the Enzo does have an air brake, but you've got to remember all of the tech on the Enzo is from around 2004. A lot has changed since then. A whole lot. And given that the Enzo and the LaFerrari are about as directly inspired by F1 tech as you can get in a road car, well, of course, the aero on these should logically improve as much as the aero on an F1 car has. from 2017 as far back as 2004. Look at the kind of improvements that the cars have had in terms of lap times. So you would logically hope and assume, rightfully so, that that would be the same with the difference between the LaFerrari and the Enzo. Well, we're going to find out what kind of difference there is between the two this Sunday on the channel. I'm going to do a rivals match between the two to find out how they actually compare. But for now, the Enzo is a car which has definitely been updated for GT Sport, which is never a bad thing. It certainly howls like you want an Enzo to. It looks fantastic inside and out. I think the biggest improvement visually to this car is the interior, because on GT6 it was already one of the better looking supercars in terms of the visual quality. The interior, though, is where you notice a much bigger difference with the cars that were already on Gran Turismo to now. And the details are where it really pops, and it's much crisper, the lighting is better, and it's a gorgeous interior on the Enzo anyway. Very race heavy, race tech heavy, carbon fibre everywhere. Personally, I like the MC12's interior even more, but of course I love the MC12, and how cool would it be if that was included on GT Sport. But for now, this is exactly the kind of supercar that you'd expect it to be. It's very powerful, very fast, pretty expensive, but not too bad, and definitely worth buying. Now, not everyone will like the handling, that's for sure, which I kind of touched on earlier, but as long as you brake a little bit earlier than in something like a Nissan GTR, for instance, or in some race cars, then throttle control and early braking will allow you to give good laps. It's yet to be determined whether it's faster than the LaFerrari. I'll have to compare the two, which, as I said, we're going to do on Sunday. But for now, at least, I'm happy with how the Enzo is performing on the game. A little bit of tuning, a little bit of upgrade here and there, but even with 1,000 horsepower, or close enough, it handles surprisingly well. And I would say, for sure, in summary, that it's a little bit more forgiving than the LaFerrari is. So overall, if you are an Enzo fan, it's certainly worth checking out. It's still expensive, but I would say it's worth checking out. And of course, as I said earlier on with the Ford F-150 review, stick around on the channel if you are new here, because I'm going to be covering all of the cars in the new DLC, both in terms of reviews and tuning, with for sure a couple of rivals matches in there as well. But that's it overall for this particular review. I'll see you guys next time, and as always, thanks for watching.